Hi everyone. In this example, we want to look at VLOOKUP with mismatched data type. When you're working with text values, it is not really a problem since there is no ambiguity. For example, if a name has been given, we know for a fact that it is a text value. The only problem you can face is perhaps if there are extra spaces, and that can always be fixed by using a trim function. On the other hand, when it comes to working with numbers, there is always a challenge because a number can be stored either as a number or as a text value. For example, in this data set that we are working with, we have a list of transactions by these customer IDs, and I want to get their name from the customer database. So if we write a VLOOKUP and we search for all these customers, and we search in the table FGNH with a result from column number 2 and an exact match. You notice that some results are coming, some of them are not coming. Now, an ID like 1637548 does not come because it does not even exist in the database. So that is a genuine NA, and we probably need to use an if error to tell the user that the value does not exist in the database. But if you look carefully, we have a 100151404 that is working, but then why is this one not working? We have a 100151402, and even though we have the name here as Aaron Bergman, we are not able to see the result. Now, you might argue and say that there is a prompt that comes here, and you can always go and convert it to a number to get the result. But then that doesn't really help you, right? Because what if you have 10,000 records with you? You're not going to go to every single one and check if that prompt is coming or not. Moreover, sometimes the prompt does not even come in the first place. As you can see, here there is no prompt. So Excel is not even telling you that there is some issue with this. Okay. Similarly, if you look at (949511), it says Jim Mitchum, right? And let me just change this a little bit. Let me make it 2. Okay. So if I look at 9495111, you notice that the result should be Justin Ritter, but we're not getting the result. And the problem is very clear. In the database, we have the data type not being mentioned correctly. Now, even though this is not very likely, because typically the problem that will occur is with the lookup column that you have and the lookup values that you have. Usually the database is already correct. For example, either all of them are numbers or all of them are text values. It might so happen that there is an error in that database as well, especially if it has been created on Excel. So let us see how we solve this problem. So we want to write a X lookup. And since we're not confident that all the values in column B are a number or not, we will have to convert it explicitly into a number. So by writing value of B5, B21, we are able to ensure that all of these are picked up as numbers. The same thing we do for the lookup array as well. When I'm looking up the values in column F, since I am not confident whether they are numbers or not, we will select column F with a value. And the result in this case comes from column G. And as you can see, we are getting all the results like this. So if you notice, we are getting a Jim Mitchum, despite the fact that, or rather we are getting, let us put in a number 2 here. Okay, so we are getting a Justin Ritter, despite the fact that in the database, it was stored as a text value. Similarly, for Aaron Bergman here and here, we are getting the results despite the lookup column being a text value. Now, how do you treat these NAs that are coming, you would want to put an if error there. So I'm just going to write if error, and we can say that value does not exist. And this way you're telling the user that the value genuinely does not exist in the database. And that is the reason why you're not able to get a result. I'm just going to change it to the ID like this. If you would like to highlight it as well, then I can just go to conditional formatting, highlight cells, and say text that contains. So ID does not exist should be red in color like this. If this is something that you're using repeatedly, I would also suggest that you can create a reusable Lambda function. I will copy the sheet and we will delete the part with the if error here. All right, now what I want to do here is that if you notice, we are selecting three things. We are selecting the range of lookup values, which is B5 to B21. We are selecting the lookup array, that is column F, and we are selecting the return array, that is column G. How we tackle this is that we can now create a Lambda, which will have three inputs in it. So I will say the lookup range, and then we have my second part, which would be the lookup array and the return array. So we say the lookup array and the return array like this. Now, right now, it's going to result in an error. It obviously will not work. But if we copy the entire thing, go to formulas name manager, and I can create a new name here. So let's call this lookup unclean data. We can paste the entire formula. And let us see if it works or not. So we can now simply say lookup unclean data. There are three parts to this. The lookup range here would be, okay, we haven't really removed the part which had the ranges selected. So let's quickly change that. We don't want to fix it to B5, B21. So we'll make sure we are putting in the lookup range here. And then we have the value, which would be the lookup array. And then finally, we have the return array. Perfect. Let us go and update our formula. So name manager, and we edit our Lambda. And we can paste it here. And let us see. So equal to lookup unclean data. The lookup range is B5, B21. The lookup array is column F, and my return array is column G. And as you can see, it works perfectly. If you wanted to, you could have made the if error a part of this formula as well. But then that's really a choice that you want to ask the user whether they do want to put an if error or not. Let us also try and create a Lambda that will take an input from the user, whether they want to keep an if error or not. So we will copy the same example one more time. And what I would like to do here is to say Lambda. Now there are going to be 4 parameters. The first one is, or rather 5 parameters. The first one will be B5, B21. That is my lookup array. My second parameter will be, so lookup values followed by my lookup array. And then we have our return array. This much we had done last time as well. But we also need to ask the user, do they want an if error or not. And if they do want an if error, then they will have to give the text that they would like to show. So we want to say here, if error, and then finally we can say the error text. Now we can continue with the rest of the formula. We will first declare a let variable, and let me just say that my formula would be x lookup, the lookup value being my lookup underscore values. Then we have our lookup array being the lookup array. And then finally, we have our return array, which comes here like this. Now, remember, we also have to do a value here. So we can just put in a value on both the lookup values as well as the lookup array like this. Now, this entire calculation we are saving using let, calling it a formula. But if you think about it, we also now need to get the result that comes out of it, which means that now we say switch, and the expression would be if error. So we want to say that a 0 meaning that the person does not want an if error, and a 1 means that they do want an if error. So a 0 means that we want to show the formula as it is. On the other hand, a 1 means that we would like to show an if error of the formula along with the text that the user has selected. That would be error underscore text. Let's quickly verify if everything is working properly. So B5, B21. Then I have F colon F. We have G colon G. We put in a 1 and we also select not found as the text. Let's check that once again. So my formula should say a value here, and this would be the function if error. Okay, let's press enter, and there you go. You're able to see the entire result. And if you would like to change the alternative result in the case of an if error, we can just change it to something else. Let us say NA, and the result changes. The only thing left for us is to take this and put it as a lambda. So I'll again copy. We go to name manager, and I will create one more lambda for lookup unclean data. So we'll say lookup unclean data, but this time we also have an if error in it. We put in our lambda here. So now we can say lookup unclean data if error. The lookup values being B5, B21, then we have column F, we have column G, we put in a 1, and then we say NA. And as you can see, we get the result. In case you did not want to use the if error, you could have just put in a 0 here, right? Now that results in an error. The reason being that if I still put in a text here, for example, if I put in a NA, it will work. So think about why this is happening. The reason is that you have not made the error text an optional argument, right? So think of how we would be able to simplify it, right? So if I go to my lambda once again, what we had earlier, let me undo a few times. What we would like to do now is to put the error text as an optional argument. And this would mean that we don't mandatorily have to put it. So if I put it inside a bracket like this, you notice we get the result. And if I Now do not keep my not found, and I keep in a 0 here, it still works along with the error. So let's make that change in the name manager as well. So I'll just copy the entire thing except the sample that we have given. We go to formulas, name manager, we will update it. So let's delete and add the new part. And there you go. If I now write unclean data with if error, we can select B5, B21, column F, column G. If you put in a 0, then it gives you the error. And if you give it a 1, it will not give you any result because you have not told it what to do. But if you give it any, then it works like this. Now, this is just a skeleton that I have created for you for your own specific tasks. Now, you should be able to create the sort of VLOOKUP that you end up using most of the time, and it can automate a lot of your work. And while it is still possible to do it using a regular formula, the fact that the Lambda will allow you to be able to create a reusable formula is very, very helpful.